Hello and welcome to a Source Gaming discussion. I'm your host NantenJex, and joining me today is a guy you've definitely heard a lot of if you've been following the channel, but you might have seen a lot of recently if you've been reading about Nintendo Switch OLED. It's Kawlun.
Depending on which article you've read, I go by many names and many professions. What was it?
Kawlun, content creator.
Wololo called me a scene member, which is pretty cool. VGC called me a content creator, which is, I guess, closer.
Yeah.
It wasn't until NME, which I didn't expect to get. God bless the person from NME, but oh my god, I didn't expect them to pick up the story. But yeah, I made sure to mention that I'm part of Source Gaming, and then they went, "Oh yeah, columns," because of my Twitter handle, which makes me wonder if I was still named Fritter Friday Bless Up on Twitter, if they would have put that in the article.
Industry Insider, Fritter Friday Bless
Fritter
Up.
Friday Bless Up.
Dropping some news. Well, obviously, you've had a pretty in-depth sort of look at the OLED, both having used it and taking a bit more of a deep dive. So, Kawlun was the obvious person to be speaking to about just giving our first impressions. So, I want to thank, first of all, Nintendo UK, because they've given us this opportunity to actually look at the Switch OLED and play it and do all that. So, I've been messing around with it for the last few days. Although Kawlun's actually, got it on launch. So...
I was going to say, I want to thank my bank account for getting me the red and blue Switch OLED from Best Buy. Very cool.
Very cool. So why don't we just give our sort of general first impressions, as you've had it for like a few more days than I have, and I've had a bit longer to sort of look around and play some games on it. Why don't you go first?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. It's like, it's really kind of weird to say, because it's like, on one hand, you know, it's just the Switch. It's this thing I've had for like 4.5 years. And you know, I had a Switch day one. I'm pretty sure my day one Switch is still on my desk. I haven't like thrown it in a drawer or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still here. It's still on. Let me turn it off. Sorry, you gotta go to bed now. But yeah, I mean, of course I was like ready to buy this thing because I'm a piece of shit. But also, like, you know, I had a PSP 1000 and I bought a PSP 3000. I'm one of those guys who like upgraded to every single like subsequent model of the 3DS, or I went from like the Xbox One to the Xbox One S, just stuff like that. Like, I'm pretty used to buying slightly better iterations of video game consoles, because if they make the experience better, if I like the thing and they make the experience better, that's really like all, you know.
Yeah, that's what you want.
I don't need to buy it. I fully understand I don't need to buy it. This is totally my choice. This is totally my problem. And, you know, yeah, the screen is just that good. I don't think there's really any other way to put it. The screen is just gorgeous. Yeah. It's like the only other OLED I've ever owned. Actually, that's not true. I've owned a couple things that have OLED screens on them, but it's like the only device that I've owned that's like an actual, real, tangible electronic that isn't like a watch or a Walkman. Was the first gen Vita, and I mean, that thing had a beautiful screen, but it was a very early OLED screen. There is something crazy about when you first boot this thing up and you're like, oh yeah, the screen's gonna glow a bit. Like, your expectations of what a flat LCD screen does is completely thrown out the window when all of a sudden you're just seeing this like Nintendo logo floating in the void, and you're like, what the fuck? And that's what kind of using this thing is like. Just everything kind of it feels bezel-less, but it's not. But it feels totally like it. Those rich, soupy, shadowy blacks are like, mwah, mwah. They're so good. Yeah. So good.
I agree. I think when I first turned it on and the Switch logo comes up and it makes the noise, I was like immediately very impressed with how the screen looked. Like, I wasn't too bothered originally about getting like an OLED, because I didn't think that the upgrade would be like massively like worth it, because there's no actual like hardware changes on like the Switch itself, other than, you know, the screen and all this. Like, it's not more powerful is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah,
games won't run like better on this thing. But it purely looks like a lot nicer, and there's a lot of little changes to make it a bit more stable, less likely to break in some parts. But like,
well, yeah, I
underestimated how good like the screen would look and how good it would make games look playing in handheld.
Yeah,
I'm a majority console person when it comes to the Switch. I did play it on handheld a few times and all this, but when I'm at home, I tend to just play things on the TV. But there's a much better incentive now to be playing things in handheld, because it does look that nice. And
yeah,
I'm very tempted to try out a few more games on it. I don't actually have Breath of the Wild on me at the moment because I lent it to my mum to try out. But I'm kind of keen to see what this looks like on the handheld, because that's already can be quite a pretty game with the lighting, and I want to see it this close to me.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I would say I'm like in that group of people who always kind of 50-50 between the two. Mm-hmm. I definitely play docked a lot. You know, like if friends are over, because like we're not huddling around tabletop mode. That shit's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I would definitely say, like, I mean, handheld mode is the reason you buy the Switch and you use the Switch. The portability really is like the selling point, and anything that just makes that experience like better, even if it's just a screen upgrade, it ends up being really nice. I mean, there was a lot of hullabaloo when this thing was first announced, because it's like, oh, well, the screen is still 720p, but like, you said you haven't played too many games on this thing yet, but like, you play a game that's like native 720p on this display, and you would think, because the screen is bigger, so the pixel density is lower, that it would kind of look worse. But good God, no! Like, games that run native res on this screen look sharp as hell. They look phenomenal on this screen. And I mean, even sub-native stuff is like, it doesn't look, I wouldn't say it looks worse, but it maybe looks a little more noticeable. But that's also just generally because the screen is slightly bigger, so you're gonna notice smaller details like that. But the colors pop so much that it's easy to be kind of, almost to kind of look past it.
Yeah.
Some of the game, like the first game I played on this thing was like Doom 3. So of course you got like those games. That game is known for being like dark as hell, but having like incredible like light and shadow tech. Mm-hmm. So of course, like when you play it on the OLED screen, it is a native 720p game. Like the game looks right. It looks great.
That's good, because I haven't played Doom 3 yet. I've got to get through Doom 64 first, but maybe then I'll give it a go.
I'm sure Doom 64 looks phenomenal on this thing.
Yeah.
But then I also tried Doom Eternal, because that's a game that runs like more kind of 540p-ish in handheld mode.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, you definitely lose a bit of that sort of edge definition on this screen.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, the environments and the enemies, they pop because of just how colorful everything is, and that's generally more worthwhile than having like total sharpness and like clarity to the image.
Yeah, I haven't played any games that run less than 720p. Like, I've tried to vary it up. I've gone for like sprite-based games. I've gone for 3D games, both like low poly style and like a bit more modern. I've gone for a bit of retro and some psychedelic games. I was playing that Pixel Junk Eden 2, which has got all the sort of like kind of Tetris effecty with all of the music and sound waves and stuff like that.
That's one of the games.
Very clean.
They couldn't have launched this thing with better games.
Yeah.
Because good Lord, like I gotta say, I haven't booted up Dread yet.
Oh, see, I've beaten it twice now, and it looks very good on the Switch OLED.
But I've been playing Tetris Effect.
Nice.
And there was a moment, I would say Saturday or Sunday night or something, that I just laid in bed. I had like a drink or two or something. I put some headphones on, and I turned off all the lights, and I was playing Tetris Effect. And it was like a fucking religious experience, which I know sounds like hyperbole, but like, not only is Tetris Effect just generally like a fantastic fucking game, but good lord, with just the color vibrancy on the OLED, along with just how good the HD rumble in that game is, like, it's phenomenal. Just good god, it was like an experience that I didn't want to quit. Like, it was just really, really, really fucking good.
No, I've been thinking about booting up Valhalla, which is another game that I think would look very, very nice on this screen, and doing a similar thing. Because when I played that in handheld, in bed, like, lights dimmed and all this, getting comfy, and it looked great then, and that was on the regular Switch. So doing that on this is probably going to be like a next level experience. So I'm thinking of replaying it again just to have that, just to see that.
Some of the games I've tried, Tetris Effect is one of them. Doom 3, Doom Eternal. I've tried just a bunch of games, really, because I was like, I gotta, go through the motions. Not a lot of like Nintendo original stuff, because, like, something like Mario Kart 8 is definitely using the system to great effect because of how colorful that game is.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, when the thing about these like new displays that have like these really, really wide kind of dynamic range of colors is like, you really want to see, games that can show everything from pitch darkness to like insane colors. So I've been playing a lot of really horror games. So like, Alien Isolation, Outlast 2, I tried out Quake, I tried out Thumper, which looks, shoutouts to Nintendo. That game looks phenomenal. Dude, I even watched an episode of Cowboy Bebop on Hulu on this screen. And like, even though this screen isn't like true HDR, they calibrated this thing just right, that it just looks great. Like, and it sucks because, I don't think there's any image you can put on the screen right now to truly, get
it across, because you got
you have
really
to see
be
it
looking
in
at on the screen.
I saw that new James Bond movie, and I saw it at like the don't worry, I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
And I saw it at like a Dolby Cinema, and they were like, this is what pitch black looks like on a regular movie screen, and it was just like black. And then they were like, this is what pitch black looks like on a Dolby Vision screen, and it was slightly darker. And it's like shit like that just looks really stupid. Like, it just does. Like, you can't look at that and be impressed. Even someone like me who loves that kind of garbage, like, it's not impressive at all. You have to see it in person, especially because then you're not also getting the fact the screen is like brighter, which is like really the main thing that sells it, is the fact that the colors can get really, really, really rich, but the screen is also really bright at the same time.
Yeah. I think moving on from the screen, that the Switch just sort of feels a bit better put together as well, the OLED.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
the entire chassis is different.
Yeah, like the Joy-Cons don't feel like they shake so much. Like, a problem I've got with my original Switch is that it doesn't feel fully attached on there, and sometimes the right Joy-Con can actually disconnect. Like, the Switch can feel like it's not actually in there. So I have to sort of really hold it tight when I'm playing in handheld, which was one of the reasons why I sort of shifted away from handheld. And I don't know if it's just because the Switch OLED is new and that's just wear and tear I'm feeling on the old Switch, but this one instantly felt a lot tighter.
The rails are definitely the rails are definitely like slightly larger. They definitely grip onto the Joy-Cons a lot tighter. Which is nice, but like, there's a lot of little things about the the chassis of this thing, like the plastic overall feels kind of tougher. I wouldn't say thicker, it just feels like a not shitty ABS plastic. The vent intakes are now on the bottom as opposed to the back, which means if you lay this thing on a table, you're not like suffocating it.
Okay.
you're not it's not like putting a baby upside down in its crib. Like, you're not just like cutting off the cooling to it. But I mean, also speaking of the cooling, like the grills on the top are thicker, so they're not gonna like crack like the old ones kind of did. Not crazy about this new game cart slot. It's a little harder to pick at, but
yeah, I noticed that. It was a bit harder to open.
I'm sure with a case it'll be even more annoying. And then of course there's the kickstand, which goes... I mean, the kickstand is just better regardless. Yeah. But it also goes back so far. I noticed, because I was doing this during the transfer process, you can now charge the Switch in tabletop mode.
Oh, neat. Oh, yeah,
because
right.
It bends back so much that the port is now actually like exposed.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah, I didn't actually realize that, because that was a problem I had with the regular Switch, that because the thing's at the bottom, you can't charge it when it's in tabletop mode. So that's pretty neat, although it is very flat. I've just done it with my Switch now, just to see what it looks like, and there's almost lying down, to be fair.
There's a lot of things they did that... Like, this really is like the Oh, and the screen is glass. It's not plastic anymore. You don't have to put a screen protector on this thing. Like, it's got like a smartphone finish to it. Oh yeah, there's that weird thing about how this thing technically does have a screen protector on it, but...
Yeah, that you shouldn't peel it off.
I mean, the screen is like flush, though. It doesn't... It's not like the Galaxy Fold where you feel like you could really pick at the screen and it comes off. Like...
Yeah.
To me, the way it reads, like the way they were talking about it, it just kind of sounded like they're just talking about how every smartphone screen has like a final layer over its glass to kind of smooth it out and keep it from shattering. But I guess we gotta wait for Jerry Rig Everything to do his light scratches at a level 6 with deeper grooves at a level 7 to truly figure that out.
One thing about the screen that I will say that I've just happened to notice over the few days, is that I feel like it gets maybe slightly dirtier faster, or more noticeably dirtier than the previous Switch, because I never really had an issue of smudging or with my fat thumbs or fabric or anything when I put it in my carrying case. But I took this one out with me today, and then when I took it out of the carrying case, I noticed bits of the fabric and stuff that's on inside this case was sort of on the screen. I had to wipe it down with a glasses cleaner. And
I was gonna say,
I think that's that's fine. I'll just have to carry a glasses cloth with me, released in the Switch bag whenever I take it with me. But that's just one thing I noticed, and it's probably because the screen is made of glass. It's probably it's probably just attracts a bit more dirt.
I was gonna say, I'm sure one of those matte finish kind of screen protectors would be really nice on this thing. Maybe to give it a bit of anti-glare. Though, I mean, this thing seems to resist light pretty good. It's not as it's not like when you take the old Switch outside and you're like, well, this is unusable.
Yeah.
Because that thing just has a...
I should try playing it outside, actually. That's the one thing I haven't done, so something I might do. If it's not raining, because it's been raining the last few days.
I haven't played it outside, but I did play it in a room that had every light on, and I could see the bezels. It was the first time I could actually see the bezels around the screen, but that was it. Otherwise, the picture looked perfect.
Nice. To move on from the Switch to the actual dock itself, the two things I've noticed on it is it now has an Ethernet port, which is neato just because I didn't have a Wii LAN adapter before, so now I can actually connect my Switch to the Wi-Fi, to the wired connection, and hopefully that will make less lag when I'm playing Smash Online, especially when I'm in my office, because it's a bit far away from my router. But also I noticed it, presumably to stop scratching on the screen, it feels a little looser when it's in the dock.
Yeah, it's much wider. It's like the OLED just kind of wobbles in that thing now.
Yeah, and it's not just the OLED. The original Switch does it as well. I sort of I've tested it, and I've got footage of me doing so, where it's just that because the dock is wider, it shakes a bit. I mean, you shouldn't be shaking the Switch anyway.
Yeah.
But I feel like if I was to like just lift up the dock and the Switch to take it to another room, I feel less confident that it's not just going to slip out with this one.
Yeah.
So,
granted, I feel like that's how
of.
that dock should have been from the get-go.
Mm.
Because of the weird scratching issue that people said there was, but I don't know, I never really had it.
Yeah, I didn't have it either, although I have a screen protector over my Switch, so my old Switch.
But I actually have to say, I think the LAN adapter is the biggest disappointment of the device. Because I've had a USB adapter for Ethernet, because I just wire up everything. And the speeds on the Switch have never been terribly good. Not that they're bad, but they're not really good either. And most people have just gone like, oh, well, yeah, because you're limited by like USB 2.0 speeds. But now we have an actual Ethernet an Ethernet port on the dock. And I'm still getting the same speeds as I was when I had that little adapter.
Okay.
Like I have like a gigabit connection. Like I would say I'm like 900 up, 800 down, so almost gigabit, I guess. But I'm still getting like my download speeds are only maxing out at like 140, 145, which for general gaming is like fine. You really don't need the fastest connection in the world to play games, reliably. You only need like, I would say at most like 50 up down. But for downloading things, which I guess we'll talk about the data transfer process, because that made that a living fucking hell. Holy shit.
Yeah, we'll go on then. Let's go on to, because you had a much harder experience with it than me, although that might have been because I'd seen how much of a difficult experience you'd had.
This is genuinely
beforehand.
This is genuinely the worst new console out of the box experience I've ever had with a video game console. And that is not exaggeration. Like, it sucks.
So what happened exactly?
Because it's not like, nothing about the process of moving everything from one Switch to another is like really automated or done in a way to make anything convenient. And I've seen some people say like, oh, well, because it's a weird use case to buy a Switch, but it's fucking Nintendo. Like, they know people are going to upgrade their console or, move everything from one system to another.
Yeah, they did it with every handheld they've ever released.
Yeah, so, and I mean, of course, the nice thing with the Switch is that the account system is no longer tied to the hardware, unless it's fucking Animal Crossing. But I mean, like, I bought an Xbox One X a couple years ago, and like, that was painless, because all you have to do is log in, and then if you have your games on an external drive, you can just unplug that external drive from the old Xbox and plug it in, and like, that's it.
Yeah.
Your games will just, you can just play them again, or you can transfer your games from one Xbox to another. And I believe PlayStation does the latter of that, but you can also do like a backup and restore on like a PS4. But on the Switch, it's just, you do the full transfer to move all of your save data over and your login. And that's it. You can't like move over your SD card with all your installed games or anything. Like, you just have to re-download everything, which is really fucking annoying.
Yeah, it's very time consuming. And with the amount of games that at least I had, it wouldn't let me have them all just set up to download. It would do them in chunks. So I went through to re-download everything, and it only went up to like the letter M or something. And then I had to wait for them to download before I could then download the next batch. So, like, even though I left it overnight to download, when I woke up in the morning, they were all... But in fact, I don't think they were all downloaded. But I had to set it up and then go to work and then come back, and then by that point, it was actually all done.
Yeah, I mean, if this thing had, like, true gigabit download speeds, that would be a non-issue. Because, like, most Switch games aren't even that big. The largest Switch game I have installed on this thing would be, like, Mortal Kombat 11, which is, like, 35 gigs, which, is big for a Switch game, but... compare that to, like, Back 4 Blood that just released on the Xbox. Like, that game alone is 30 gigs. So it's like, it's not a problem. It would be done in like 10 minutes on any other platform, but it takes me like a fucking hour on the Switch. But what really makes the data transfer process so fucking bad is it's also worded really poorly. Because you open up the Switch, you add a new user, and then it goes like, do you want to... It asks like a bunch of questions. The first one is like, do you have a previous console you want to transfer things over from? And you're like, yeah. And then it goes, do you want to keep using your old console? And for some reason, this is like the most crucial question on the planet. Because if you say yes, it just logs you in to the new system. And then you would have to manually re-download all your save data from the cloud or manually transfer it over from your old console. Mm-hmm. It doesn't assume, or there's no option for you to transfer everything over, but like keep you logged in on the other console, which you have to do for Animal Crossing. Because
see,
the only
Animal
other...
Crossing, I made it easier for myself because I have multiple accounts and a friend's account on the Switch, and he has an Animal Crossing thing, so I used his account after I transferred mine over to then transfer the whole island over. Although this has raised an interesting question for me, because I haven't transferred his account over to the new Switch. So if I boot up Animal Crossing on my new Switch, which has my island on it, will he just no longer exist on my island? Because I haven't moved his account over. So his save data isn't there. So will his entire area and house just be ejected?
Yeah,
or will there be like an empty house there?
Yeah, you'd probably have to. You'd have to also transfer all his data over too. I have no fucking clue because it's both like account and hardware tied. It's so fucking weird. The other option they give you is like, will you continue to use this older console? And then you hit no, and then it transfers all your save data over, but also logs you out of the old console, which makes no fucking sense. So if you want to do your Animal Crossing island transfer, you have to then go back to your old Switch and log back in. You have to make a new user and log back in and then go through everything I just told you, but then say yes this time. So then you can log in and use the Animal Crossing island transfer tool.
Yeah.
And this gave me so much fucking stress because I don't want to lose my data in that game.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
if I lose my data in that game, I'm never playing it again. Fuck that. But I wanted to make sure. I was like, I need to know the actual proper official way of doing this. So I tweeted at Andre Seegers on Twitter.
To Game Explain.
Yeah, who, by the way, they just put me in a video. So I'm finally in a Game Explain video. Oh my god, Triss. But no, I tweeted at him because I'm like, how did you do it? And he was like, I think you have to log in again on the old Switch. And the words I think don't cut it for me. So I called Nintendo's support hotline. Because I was like, I need official confirmation on how this fucking works. And I called them, which, by the way, one of like the fun fact tidbits on their support hotline is, please note that you cannot transfer content between the 3DS and Wii U. Very cool. Very cool.
Just gonna let people know.
Yeah, really timely. But I contacted Nintendo. I explained this. I don't even want to say it's a very specific situation because like people are gonna encounter this.
Yeah, it's not very obvious.
Like it was the same. I think what you have to do is re-log in, and I'm like, if they don't fucking know, they basically said like, I think that's how it works, but if something fucks up, just call us anyway, because the only other way to transfer your Animal Crossing island is to do the restore from cloud backup, in which you have to call Nintendo to fucking kick that off. Again, so stupid. So fucking stupid. And like this really was the worst part of it. Like this is a call to Nintendo to do better. Like this is fucking awful.
Yeah, it sounds
and for what reason? To stop people from cheating in Animal Crossing? They can change the fucking system clock. It's not stopping anyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's to a lesser extent also the same thing with Pokemon and Splatoon, because those don't get cloud backups to avoid people cheating. So
no, but you can still do like a transfer.
Yeah, those still go over the transfer, but people who are aware that there's a problem, like with those games as well, when they already know it's Animal Crossing, started panicking because there's no app like there is for the Animal Crossing one. So people were like, do I have to go on the like Nintendo Switch phone app and transfer it that way?
That shit is so obnoxious. So I was a trailblazer for you and many others who then needed to know how to transfer over their Animal Crossing shit, because this is like obnoxious.
I saw your problem, I saw Andre reply to it, I decided to watch the game explain video they then made before I did anything, so that I would know exactly what I'm doing. But the issue I had with it, and this is a bit more of a me issue, is because I have 3 Nintendo accounts, one for like each of the major regions, I had to transfer over 3 accounts back to back. And like I have not touched my like Japanese account or American account, like actually logged into my Nintendo in ages. So I didn't know what bloody password I had done.
Oh, you had to go through all that shit.
I had to go through all that shit, but because I had to set up 2-factor authentication on this Nintendo earlier in the year,
too,
and like they set up 2-factor authentication for like all my accounts, but I'd only actually had it set up on my phone for my main account, so I couldn't use 2-factor authentication for my American or Japanese account. So I had to go round it by using the QR code scanner that they offer on their site. And that became just a massive ordeal of scanning things in. And then I don't know if there's something wrong with the website, but I logged in as my main account, signed out again, attempted to log in with my American account. It just logged me back into my main account again. So I was having to do all sorts of nonsense, like signing out, going onto my computer, doing this one there, doing this one, then the next one on my phone. And that ended up just making the process so much more complicated. Or just to like make sure I had Snipper Clips, because that's the only game on my Japanese account. And then a few others on the American one. It was like far less stressful than what you went through.
Yeah.
But far more annoying and cumbersome to do than should be necessary.
The only other issue I've had with the Switch OLED that I would say is like a real like, oh, this sucks. Okay. Is the third-party accessory situation right now. Because, like, all of your old Switch case grips don't fit, because the chassis is, like, both slightly larger, but it's also, like, shaped differently. So I can't use, like, my old Skull & Co. Grip case on this thing, which sucks, because I've been using a Skull & Co. grip case since I looked it up May 3rd, 2018. I have not used the Switch flat since May 3rd, 2018, and going back to it feels awful. You need a grip case for this thing. It does not feel good flat. And my Skull & Co. Neo grip is still in China. God damn it. And no place near me sells like the Satisfy grip, but also I don't want to like spend $30 on a thing I'm going to use for like 5 days. But the real issue is that it seems like third-party docks just do not work with this thing.
Which is interesting because, like, the Switch, it works like the Switch OLED can be played on the original Switch dock perfectly fine.
I think it's because the Switch OLED uses like a new like video protocol for its output that I guess has like a legacy setting for the original Switch dock. But obviously like third-party docks don't work 100% the same. So it's not that third-party docks are totally like they just don't work. It's that if you try to plug them in, I have the Skull & Co. jump gate, and when you hook it up, it just displays in like 480p only. Which is actually weird, because that's like a weird glitch with the Switch sometimes, where if it doesn't initialize properly, like the docked experience will be at a lower resolution. But, I mean, I used the new dock on my regular TV and it worked fine. And then I have a second, like, tiny dock that's, it's basically the guts of the OEM dock, but in like a smaller chassis. It's like those little kits you can buy off of Amazon for $12. I have one of those, and that works totally fine too. But I brought that up to Skull & Co., and I mean, you can upgrade the firmware on that thing, so I'm sure they're working on a firmware update for that dock, but I'm sure if you have something like the Best Buy Insignia dock or something that just doesn't have a way to update like the firmware on it, you might be screwed, and that really sucks, because some of those third-party docks are like great. I love having those like just tiny just little, the little docking stations so you can hook it up to a computer monitor or take it on travel or something. But speaking of the dock.
Yeah, alright, let's so that was our sort of first impressions of but we also wanted to touch upon what I guess Kawlun sort of discovered that's got him mentioned everywhere, because everyone else is talking about it, and may as well, the guy who found it is here.
So this is here it is. Here's the reason why you're probably here, like 20 minutes in. Chapter mark, here it is. So yeah, to say that the sort of what would you even call it? Just like I guess the lead up. Well, the lead up to the Switch OLED has been really weird, because like it's like the elephant in the room of the Switch OLED is of course that like this isn't a Switch Pro. People have just been expecting a more powerful Switch or some sort of, just a Pro model to exist. And it kind of didn't happen. And I mean, there's episodes, if you want to hear my full thoughts about the whole like Switch Pro situation and all that guff, I would just say listen to our Good Morning Source Gaming episode about it. Because I ramble on for like 2 hours about that shit. There's no reason for me to reiterate like everything about that nonsense right here and now. But definitely the circumstances around this console have been really weird, because like this console was data mined. Like we knew this thing was coming since last year. We even did a video on it in like April of 2020 that completely misses the mark of what this thing ended up being. That was a fun time. Remember when it was called NXABCD and everyone's like, oh, a second screen? That clearly means it's going to be a dual screen and not just a second display type. We were so dumb. But yeah, so there's just been like a lot of hullabaloo about, what is the intention of this thing other than just being a slightly nicer model of the console. And I want to shout out a couple people here. I want to shout out Skeery's M, who's like a big name in the Switch homebrew community. I mean, he's the guy who's basically like, he made Atmosphere. He's the one that's like, maintaining Switch Brew. That's actually the main reason I wrote this Twitter thread, was just because I noticed that all the information about the new dock wasn't on Switch Brew yet, and I was like, I bet if I opened the thing up and took a bunch of pictures of the chips inside, like, the information will get updated within the day. That didn't happen, but I hope it does. But yeah, Nintendo Prime, who funnily enough is run by my old Zelda Informer boss. That's fun. He got his copy of he got his unit of the Switch OLED a little bit early, and he opened up the dock and he was like, oh, there's like a bunch of new chips in here. These line up with chips that may or may not be able to do 4K upscaling or whatever. And, not to, I guess, dunk on his video or anything, for lack of a better term, because he's right. Like, yeah. He's basically right. I wouldn't say he's totally right, but he's on the money for the most part. But I just kind of felt like it was weird that we really didn't have like just a thread of really solid information and findings about this stuff. So I opened up my Switch OLED dock. Don't do it. It's fucking annoying. I took off like the EMI shield off of the HDMI port, and I found that the chip that is used for the HDMI out on the OLED dock is a Realtek. Specifically, it's designated RTD2172N. Now here's the thing about this chip, and this blew my mind when I Google searched it. First off, Scary's back in, if that's how you pronounce his username, he said in January that the chip in the OLED dock would be a 4K Realtek chip, which is already like nutty. That's already crazy. But if you look up the actual designation number, RTD2172N, the results you'll get, and this blew my fucking mind, the first results you'll get are posts from December 2020 talking specifically about the chip that's in the new Switch OLED dock. But if you try to look up this chip on Realtek's website to find like a data sheet, there's nothing.
Interesting.
Data miners had information about what was inside the Switch OLED dock 6 months before they announced the thing. For a chip that basically doesn't exist outside of the Switch OLED dock, and that blows my mind. So that's the first thing I wanted to get out there, because I just think that's nutty to me. And then I noticed that shout outs also to Philippe of Switch Brazil, who through talking to some of his people, he found a data sheet of a similarly designated Realtek chip. Like it's not the same designation. There's like, I think one letter is off.
Right.
But that chip is, yeah, it's very close. Yeah, it's like, it's the same designation, except the last letter is a U instead of an N.
Okay.
But it says HDMI 2.0B, so it's not HDMI 1.4, which means it theoretically is possible to do 4K 60 FPS output on that thing. The Switch OLED also comes with a new HDMI cable, or at least maybe a new HDMI cable. There's not really a way to test HDMI cables proper because they're rated by speed, which is really weird. I don't know if I can just like plug that into my computer and then just run a program that just does like a data transfer really quickly across those lines. So I did a really shoddy test where I plugged it into an Xbox One X and nothing changed. So at the very least, I mean, I don't know if that cable is I don't know what the designation of that cable is, but it seems to have no problem doing 4K 60 Hertz, which that's fine. And then the last thing that really tipped me off was, when that new OS update came out, 13.0.0, the one that came with Bluetooth audio, it added that feature to do a firmware update for the dock, specifically for the OLED dock. And I figured this was because, it's probably like a day one update, like maybe it doesn't have total compatibility with the original Switch, or they need to like install new drivers for the LAN port or something.
Yeah.
There is no update for it. The day one dock just arrives completely up to date. So it means they included that feature, presumably, because they have things planned later down the line.
Yeah, they're future-proofing the dock.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, you have an HDMI out that is possible to do 4K 60 output. You have a cable that seemingly is fine for 4K 60 output, and you have abilities to update the dock. Plus, we know that Nintendo is willing to update the Switch with new features later down the line, like we saw with Bluetooth audio. So maybe, just maybe. Plus, we've also had outlets like the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg saying that apparently developers are working on something involving the Switch and 4K, which, they say it's new hardware, but at the same time, there's no evidence of new hardware other than what we have. And the Switch OLED is new hardware. There was a new dev kit made for it. And we know developers are given early versions of later iterations of the Switch OS's feature updates. So maybe, just maybe, there's a possibility that in a year or whatever, they will update the dock and the Switch to support 4K and or HDR output. And that's all the shenanigans we're hearing. Right. Now, I do want to disclaim, because I know it's a big claim, I do want to disclaim that my definition of 4K output is significantly more boring than most people's, because I don't mean that I think the Switch the Switch dock can do like DLSS AI upscaling. No, it can't. Even I shout out to the guy at Tweaktown who did an article who was basically like, this thing can't do upscaling. I agree, it can't. It doesn't have like really any guts on board to really do it. And the Switch itself doesn't have like tensor cores or anything to do DLSS. I also don't think this means games are going to be running necessarily at 4K. I think this is going to be more of a situation like when Sony updated the PlayStation 4 or the PS4 Slim to have HDR and or 4K output. Even though games don't run at 4K, having that 4K output is a really nice feature, because the Switch on a 4K display looks kinda bad. Because you're looking at a sub-native internal resolution running at a sub-native picture on a higher end display. Yeah. If you just plug like an Xbox One S into a 4K TV, even if you're not playing Halo at 4K, like generally the picture quality will look better, because the 4K output means that your TV doesn't have to do so much like upscaling or post-processing to the image to make it fit on your screen. It's just taking what it's getting and then just applying its basic like color correction and stuff. Which would be really nice. That like the Switch as a modern device should just have that. Even if games aren't running at 4K, you would get a somewhat better picture. Because you don't have to deal with 720p being upscaled to 1080p being upscaled to 4K. So, I will note, however, because this is not like a hot prediction. This is not me going, this is definitely going to happen. Because I will say that, currently within the OS, there's nothing to really say that we're going to be getting a 4K or HDR update yet. Though the display out protocol does check for new firmware versions, which is interesting. But Skeeries himself in July said that it's possible the new Realtek chip is just being used for better audio output as opposed to 4K output. There's also been theories by some people that the chips have been changed to newer chips because they're now just cheaper to obtain than using the same old chips that are like 5 years old. But what I'm really more saying is that Nintendo clearly put the means in place that if they wanted the Switch to do 4K output using the OLED dock, regardless of what version of the console you have, by the way, and that includes the original like V1 and 2 models too, they could possibly do it. Okay. And I so far I haven't really seen anyone say kind of anything that would stop that from being the case. There's been a lot of questioning about whether or not the Switch internally can actually output at that, which is kind of all over the place because the way the Switch displays video through its USB-C port is kind of like a weird, like, proprietary thing. It's not really like a direct HDMI connection out. But it seems like it's totally doable. And it would be a very nice update. But whether or not they'll actually do it, I would say I'm like 50-50 on. It's possible they won't, but it's curious. The potential is definitely there. And, if they do it, that would it would be nice for people like me who have a 4K TV, and it's possible Nintendo will not update games to run in 4K, but maybe do like 4K HUD updates, just have like the HUD elements run at a higher resolution, so everything kind of looks proper.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's kind of where we're at right now, and I would say it's definitely something that I'm very curious if we'll see anything in like the next like big OS update.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to keep our eyes out for it and see what new sort of stuff can be data mined, like how a lot of this was like practically a year ago.
Yeah, this is I didn't want to make this video into a talking about the Switch Pro, Switch 2 stuff, because that's a whole other discussion, because there's obviously a lot more to talk about in that regard, but the main point of that thread really was just to post what was actually in the dock and their potential. The potential of that hardware, because I don't know, I find it neat. I think it's cool.
And it is pretty cool, and I think it's worth noting that if this potential is there and Nintendo plans on updating this and all this, it might mean that they don't necessarily have any plans for another iteration of the Switch, at least for like another 2, 3, 4 years, maybe even, or maybe if it is the Switch 2 and not the Switch Pro, because if that is the case and they've got stuff like this and they're just going to be updating what the dock can do and output at just to improve the quality of life on the Switch OLED, I don't see them abandoning it anytime soon.
Yeah. I don't know. Could be cool. Could be neato.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whatever, man. The Switch OLED dock screen is beautiful. The dock screen. No, just the Switch OLED screen is it's gorgeous. Whatever. I'm playing that shit in handheld mode.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna need to do that as well. I'm gonna need to play quite a few more games through handheld mode.
Need that grip, baby.
Enjoy. Well, thank you, Kawlun, then, for all of that sort of explanation, because I'm not a techie guy, so it would have completely... all of this has gone like sort of completely over my head when I was trying to catch up on everything.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's Switch a lot of nerd shit.
Switch OLED looks good, and I'm going to be doing a sort of proper review video for it, which everyone can look forward to. Hopefully it should be out this week or the beginning of next week, depending on how much I talk about in it. But just wanted to run a few more tests and stuff like that in that first. But anyway, thank you everybody for listening in for this discussion. Let us know if you got the Switch OLED in the comments below and what your thoughts about it have been so far. What's your experience? Did we enlighten you on anything? Have you been also super curious about the transfer and worried about sorting that all out, and now you sort of have an understanding of
I really hope we cleared that up for people. Yeah.
Just let us know. So on screen right now should be all of the patrons from the $5 up tier. Want to give a big special thank you to them. Obviously, sharing the video, liking it, subscribing to the channel, all of that good jazz is always very helpful. But the main thing is that you should always remember to return to the source. Alright, later guys.
See ya.